More details about the latest round of the employment support scheme. 431 new COVID-19 cases in the city. And Macron becomes the first French president to win re-election in 20 years.
Good evening and welcome. Starting Friday, companies have until May 12th to apply for subsidies under a new round of the employment support scheme.
The government will begin dispersing the subsidies in 2 to 3 weeks at the earliest, but payments for the last month will be made in 2 installments to prevent dismissal of workers in violation of the rules.
Under the latest employment support scheme, companies will receive government subsidies of $8,000 for each worker and $4,000 for each part-time worker every month between May and July. At most, 1,000 workers from a company can benefit from the subsidies, but for pharmacies and supermarkets, only 100. Employers will have to choose a reference month, meaning they can declare the number of employees in accordance with the figures they reported in the previous round of the employment subsidy scheme. They will also be able to adjust their headcounts in June and July.
Employers can, on the basis of the latest business situation, on their exact headcount, make assessment closest to the market situations.
Workers aged 65 or above with earnings less than $3,000 a month can also get a $4,000 subsidy each month. If the number of employees hired within the subsidy period turns out to be less than the declared figures, the employer will have to pay back the excess subsidy in full, plus 10% of the sum as a penalty. The government has also refuted accusations that the help comes a little too late.
Launching the ESS too early would not be an opportune time. There was the consumption voucher and the second stage of relaxation in May. We think that with wage subsidy over May to July, it would be at the right time to help employers and enterprises to get back on their feet.
But an economics expert disagrees, saying large corporations can often survive adverse situations and benefit from these subsidies. He added the subsidies are supposed to help the vulnerable ones, but if they have already lost their jobs, then the scheme has lost its purpose. Authorities say 860 enterprises have failed to pay or return some $77 million in fines or subsidies from the previous round of ESS. They will have to settle those payments in order to apply for the new batch of subsidies. Subsidies for the month of July will be given out in 2 installments so that any penalties can be deducted if necessary.
There were 431 new COVID infections today as some 600 schools resumed in-person classes.
For one of the students testing positive, a teacher at the same school also tested positive last week. Authorities believe the virus was not transmitted in the school as the two were in different classes. Caleb Lewing reports.
The Center for Health Protection today reported 431 new COVID cases, with 224 discovered through nucleic acid tests and 189 using rapid antigen tests. All but 16 cases were locally transmitted infections. With more than 600 schools reopening their campuses to resume in-person classes, 13 students and 6 teachers from 19 different schools tested positive for COVID. 3 students have returned to school since, and for one of them, a teacher at the same school also tested positive last week.
They were from the same school, but they had not met each other. They were not in the same class. There are still cases in the community. For the positive cases, very likely that they might have been contracted the virus from their family members or in the community. As long as there's no outbreak in schools, they will continue to observe the situation. Chances of outbreak are not high now.
The authorities also reported that a person who arrived from Nepal on April 12th tested positive on the 12th day after arrival. The person tested positive on February 1st in Nepal and had since recovered and has returned to the community after finishing 7 days hotel quarantine in Hong Kong. The authorities need further time to conclude whether the person is a repositive case or was infected here in Hong Kong. Meanwhile, 11 more COVID patients aged between 72 and 95 died at public hospitals. So far, the fifth wave of COVID-19 has claimed 9,054 lives. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
The mainland reported 2,666 locally transmitted COVID cases, of which 2,472 were in Shanghai. Shanghai also reported some 17,000 local asymptomatic infections out of around 17,500 local asymptomatic carriers on the mainland. Meanwhile, Beijing reported 29 locally transmitted COVID cases. Another 5 neighborhoods have been classified as medium risk, bringing the total number of medium risk areas in Beijing to 6. The city currently has 1 high-risk area.
Elsewhere tonight, Emmanuel Macron has been re-elected as French president, defeating right-wing challenger Marine Le Pen in the second round.
Many French abstained from voting, though, finding neither candidate palatable to their tastes. It was the lowest turnout since 1969. Matthew Bray reports.
Macron won 58.55% of the vote compared to Le Pen's 41.45%, according to Interior Ministry figures out Monday. The percentages are way down on 2017 and the abstention rate was 28.1%, illustrating the divide in French society. Nevertheless, Macron was upbeat, addressing supporters. After 5 years of transformations, both happy and difficult, and exceptional crises, a majority have chosen to trust me to lead our republic for the next 5 years. Macron was far from crowing, however, acknowledging that many who voted for him did so to block Le Pen, not because they support his ideas. The next era will not be the same as the last mandate. We will invent a new way of doing things together. No one will be left by the side of the road, Macron opined. In fact, the mood was defiantly more raucous at the Le Pen concession, with her conceding defeat, but calling her result a victory and a source of hope for the French, who she said had sent a signal to Macron. So yes, to avoid the grabbing of power by the few, I will continue my commitment to France, the French people, with the affection, perseverance and energy you know of me, she said. Le Pen will now turn her attention to June's parliamentary vote. With nearly 42% of the vote, she has tapped into anger across the country over the rising cost of living, the willful decline of rural communities, and the overall disenchantment with Macron's aloof style. Macron wants a complete shake-up of the welfare state, but it may be hard to get, given Le Pen's strong response and hard-left Jean-Luc Mélenchon set on becoming Prime Minister. The legislature may not end up giving him a majority needed for his policies. Economists see Macron becoming a potential lame duck if he tries to implement sensitive reforms, such as for pensions. Matthew Bray, TVB News.
There were some protests following the re-election of Emmanuel Macron. Riot police were deployed to Lyon and Paris to target demonstrators. Protesters threw fireworks at a police car in Lyon and marched with a banner that read, "Down with Macron, the Robin Hood of the rich." In the district of Châtelet in Paris, police tried to break up a group of mostly young protesters. It is not clear if there were any injuries or arrests made. Macron won a runoff vote, beating right-wing challenger Marine Le Pen, but the abstention rate was the highest since 1969. A substantial chunk of voters chose to not vote for either candidate. In the U.S., New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has signed emergency declarations after wildfires continue to burn in nearly half of the state's 33 counties. Officials say more than 200 structures have been charred and an additional 900 remain threatened. New Mexico has secured about $3 million in grants to help with the fires. In the northern part of the state, one wildfire that started on April 6th merged with a newer fire Saturday. They formed the largest blaze in the state. That has led to widespread evacuations in Mora and San Miguel counties. In Nebraska, authorities said wind-driven wildfires sweeping through parts of the state has killed a retired fire chief and injured at least 11 firefighters.
Still ahead on tonight's news, top American officials meet Zelensky in Kyiv, pledging to help ensure Ukraine wins its fight against Russia. A look at KMB's new electric buses And Rome celebrates its 2,775th birthday.
Welcome back to TVB News. Washington's top diplomat and its defense secretary have pledged more military aid, including advanced weapons and a return of U.S. envoys to Ukraine.
It was the highest level American visit to the Ukrainian capital since Russia invaded 2 months ago.
During a visit shrouded in secrecy designed to show Western support, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin met with Ukraine's top leadership in Kyiv late Sunday.
We've gotten used to seeing you on video around the world, but it's good to see you in person.
The meeting ran for 3 hours, more than double the allotted time. Blinken and Austin pledged hundreds of millions of dollars in new assistance for Volodymyr Zelensky's government. As Russian forces pivot to Ukraine's eastern industrial heartland of the Donbass, Ukraine's military is now focused on more tanks, artillery, and other munitions. In Poland, after the meeting, the U.S. official said Ukraine's government is committed to winning the fight against Russia and that the U.S. will help achieve that goal.
The first step in winning is believing that you can win. We believe that they can win if they have the right equipment, the right support.
Blinken said the high-level visit provided an important moment for detailed face-to-face conversations to apply more pressure on Moscow.
Russia has already failed, and Ukraine has already succeeded because the principal aim that President Putin brought to this, in his own words, was to fully subsume Ukraine back into Russia, to take away its sovereignty and independence. And that has not happened and clearly will not happen.
Blinken also said U.S. diplomats returning to Ukraine will likely restaff the consulate in Lviv in western Ukraine before later returning to Kyiv. As fighting continues, Russia struck deep into Ukraine today, targeting infrastructure far from the front line, according to Ukrainian and Russian reports. In a series of strikes on Ukraine's railways, a Russian missile hit one facility outside Lviv.
Back locally, Chief Executive hopeful John Lee's campaign office says it has received recommendations submitted by 73 different youth organizations. Raymond Tam, one of the deputy directors of Lee's campaign, said the campaign team will fully consider the recommendations, adding that Lee may adopt some of the ideas in the future. Tam also said Lee's political platform is taking shape and may be announced before this weekend. Tam asked the public to be understanding about Lee's relatively few appearances in public events, as his campaign team is busy drafting the election manifesto.
An anti-smoking group has submitted a petition entitled Tobacco Endgame Plan to the chief executive candidate, John Lee. The group aims to reduce smoking in Hong Kong by 2030. The Hong Kong Council on Smoking and Health says around 167 election committee members have signed the Tobacco Endgame petition. The petition was sent to Lee via email around 2 weeks ago. The council hopes the new government can implement their suggested measures to take further action on reducing the prevalence of smoking to 5% or below in the city. Their suggestions include a substantial increase in tobacco tax and the expansion of smoke-free areas.
Former University of Hong Kong legal scholar Benny Tai today admitted to 4 counts of engaging in illegal conduct at an election. The court heard that Tai placed 6 newspapers advertisements in 2016 to promote his strategic plan for the Let's Go general election that was held that year. The 6 advertisements, placed through a company called X Alliance, incurred election expenses totaling more than $253,000. The expenses incurred were illegal because Tai was neither a candidate nor an election agent of any candidate. The court adjourned sentencing until May 24th and Tai was remanded in custody. The other 2 defendants, Yip Kim Ching and Sek Sao Ching, were bound over for 12 months for the sum of $40,000 each.
Secretary for the Civil Service Patrick Nip said authorities will follow up cases regarding civil servants' misconduct. Nip said authorities will go after cases where civil servants released misinformation or internal information online. Meanwhile, Nip also said there were 27 government staff members who failed to comply with the vaccine pass requirement in early April. They were all regarded as absent without authorization, and 5 of them have already left their positions. For the rest of the cases, the authorities said they will take possible disciplinary action if necessary.
A fish swimming in the Chimun River attracted the attention of passers-by this morning. The fish was spotted in the river off Long Yat Estate with its grey fin sticking out of the water. Some pedestrians alerted the police that they saw a shark. Some others thought they saw a dolphin. Lydia Pang, a senior project manager of the Worldwide Fund for Nature in Hong Kong, believes the fish is a mola mola. She added that it's a pretty common fish spotted in Taiwan and Japan, but pretty rare for one to appear in Hong Kong waters.
The Kowloon Motor Bus Company has started deploying its 16 new single-deck electric buses.
The bus company says it will not purchase any more diesel-powered vehicles in future, and it aims to upgrade its entire fleet to new energy buses by 2050. Christy Khan reports.
This electric green single-deck bus is one of the 16 electric buses that Kowloon Motor Bus has purchased in order to develop its new energy bus fleet. The vehicles will be deployed on Route 6, plying between Lai Chi Kok and Star Ferry in Tsim Sha Tsui.
The new single-deck bus has more capacity compared to the existing model and can accommodate about 18 passengers.
And a full charge requires just around 1.5 hours, more than twice as fast as the previous model. Also, free 5G Wi-Fi connection service is available for passengers.
Compared to the existing single-deck electric buses, the driving range of this bus has been improved by about 20 kilometers. So the reason behind is the new systems that have been employed. One of them is the new battery management system that is assisted by water cooling. So it can ensure high performance of our battery system and together with a longer life.
Apart from these, the new electric buses also symbolize a new development.
The green bus is zero-emission vehicles. This is the first time we are providing a green and zero-emission buses service to our passenger in a batch. So we are hoping that Hong Kong people would be happy to take a ride, especially on green buses.
Meanwhile, KMB has also purchased 52 new electric double-deckers, and they are scheduled to be delivered to Hong Kong next year. The bus company said they will purchase 500 more electric buses in 2025 and aims to upgrade the entire bus fleet to new energy buses by 2050. Christy Khan, TVB News.
The Italian capital, Rome, celebrated its 2,775th anniversary last Thursday. This is known as Natale di Roma, or Rome's Christmas, with 4 days of events based on the founding of the city by Romulus in 753 BC. The annual birthday celebration includes historical reenactments of ancient Roman rituals, costumed parades, and gladiator fights. These are put on by the Rome Historical Group in the Circus Maximus. The highlight of the celebrations is the Roman Historic Parade held on Sunday. Around 800 participants from 7 European countries took part in the parade. That's the news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.